Hello and welcome. I'm Gabe and this is my first motovlog. This is not my first attempt at a motovlog, but gotta practice recording, gotta practice what I'm gonna say. Takes a few tries. I want to start motovlogging though, and I want to get better at it because I want to do other videos about bikes, about motorcycling in general, about trips, maybe about mods and garage installs, all that good stuff. Really into bikes, my main hobby, so I really want to share that. Really like other people's bike content, so I want to contribute as well. And today we're going to have a simple start topic. We're going to talk about this bike. This is a KTM 790 Adventure from 2019. I bought it in June of 2019, so it's been my bike for a little more than 2 years now because it's July of 2020. And I should say now in advance that this is going to be a bittersweet video. I've sold this bike. Today is Saturday, and Wednesday next week I will be I will be giving it away. Selling it, trading it in, basically. It will no longer be in my possession. It will no longer be my bike. And I'm going to talk about why. So quickly, we'll do a little walk around, talk about the very basic specs on the bike if you want to know anything more advanced, like, I don't know, fork travel or shock travel or all kinds of stuff. I don't know it all by heart. I'm just going to go over the real basics. KTM's website has everything else for you, no problem. Basic specs, you've got a 799cc parallel twin engine. It puts out about 95 horsepower. You've got 470 pounds wet, so full of 20 liters of gas, which are held in those pods, which I'll show you up close in a second. It's kind of an interesting feature of the bike. It's an ADV bike, off-road bias. You've got a 21-inch front wheel, 18-inch rear. You've got spoked tubeless tires, which is really cool because you can fix a typical puncture with a tubeless patch kit with a bacon strip. But since it's a spoked wheel, it's not a cast one, it'll bend, it won't necessarily break, and you can put a tube in there and kind of limp home if you bash it on a rock in a trail or something. That's a cool feature. Yeah, I think that covers the real basic specs. I mentioned these fuel pods. This is where the bike keeps its gas. This is one of the kind of neat features of this thing. There's one of these on each side, and they're made out of like some kind of reinforced plastic or polymer. Go away, butterfly. It's not a good spot for him. This is kind of like a crash bar for the bike. I mean, this protects the engine effectively. KTM has rammed them into rocks, all kinds of good stuff, and they seem to have held up. So it also has the obvious benefit of keeping the weight low. The gas is held low instead of up high like on most of these bikes, so you want 20 liters, that's a good amount. The fuel range, it'll go 450 kilometers on that 20 liters of gas, which is pretty awesome. Maybe more if you drive nicely, so there's a little walk around here. I have the standard version, not the R, so I have the standard windscreen. I don't have the better forks and shock, but the benefit is the seat's a little lower. The face of this bike is not what I would call beautiful. I mean, just look at it. It's not for me, the insectoid kind of face. I find the rest of the bike is very handsome, but directly from the front like that, it's not so bad. The good news is you don't see it when you're riding it. Last thing to talk about, mods. I only did like 2 mods of consequence. I installed center stand, SW Motec. I couldn't get the standard KTM one. There wasn't even a part number when I tried yet, but this one's fine. It does a good job. It's a little annoying to install because there's like a spring stretching tool, but I mean, I tried using the tool. It was still a nightmare. My buddy had to help me. We almost died to spring-related injury, but hey, we made it through. The spring's installed. It's good. Center stand, and I added SW Motec luggage racks, 2 pannier racks, and this kind of adventure rack thing. And you put those aluminum boxes on there. I think they're called Trax ADV, the ones that go with this. So it's pretty cool for traveling. And that's it. So let's go for a ride. I'm going to go into why I bought this bike and what the situation was when I bought this bike. I'm going to go into what I like and dislike about it, and then I'm going to tell you why I'm selling it, because I am, like I said, selling it. And in a few days, I'll have a different bike. So let's go. So I live in the suburbs of Montreal in Quebec, Canada, and about 45 minutes out of the city. And that's where we're going to be riding around mostly today. It's not, the most original looking place. I think all the suburbs on most of planet Earth look like this, at least in North America. Maybe not planet Earth. Very generic. And that actually brings me into one of the reasons why I bought this bike. So I'll start with the story. In 2019, I had two bikes. I had a 2014 Honda CBR 600 RR Super Sport bike and had a 2006 Suzuki DRZ 400 dual sport bike. And I lived in a neighborhood that was shockingly similar to this one, even though it was like an hour away from here. I mean, I'm pretty sure the same company built the buildings even. They look so similar. It's outdoor parking only. I had one car spot for my car, and then my bikes had to be parked in a visitor spot, and then I had to do my maintenance in the parking lot, which I don't think the HOA type situation liked very much. So it wasn't great owning a bike at all, but it especially wasn't great owning two, which means double the space, double the maintenance, and so on, right? So I decided that I wasn't going to not have a bike, but I decided that I would try to go to just one bike, and I didn't want to just keep either one of those and sell the other, so I wanted something that would kind of split the difference between a sporty road ride and off-road capability. I also wanted a bit more touring capability because I was trying to do some touring, and both of those bikes are bad for a variety of reasons for touring. The DRZ is okay if you can pack light and if you can stomach the seat. The CBR just has no way to really bring any significant luggage with you, and of course it's a super sport, so it unless you're just bombing down the highway, and that's what touring is for you, where the wind is holding you up. It's not, after a while, it's not the most comfortable thing to do long distance on. So I came to this bike. I kind of found out about it in late 2018 and followed its release in North America, which was very painful and full of what's going on and no one knows, and this is a whole thing. But, in the end, I went to a bike show in February of 2019. I sat on the Adventure R, realized it was too tall for me by a little bit. I couldn't really even get both of the tips of my feet down on it. It's so tall. So I decided I would get this one, which is good because you could get this one. The Adventure R was basically unobtainium. I would have had to put money down in like November of 2018 to get a chance. As it was, I did it in February of 2019, and I picked up this bike in June of 2019. So yeah, 2 years later, I've been riding it. Oops, wow, that was weird. Didn't want to go into first there. No, I don't think that's ever happened before. I've had some funny stuff with the transmission that I'm going to talk about later, but that's a new one. Yeah, I got it in June of 2019. It's July of 2021, so I've had a little more than 2 years. I've ridden it about 18,500 kilometers. I've done two long trips, one very long, like 10-day long trip to Nova Scotia and back, and then one 2-day trip last year with a lot of kilometers each day. I've mostly ridden it on road or on gravel road, not so much on trails. I've tried a few times. I'm going to talk about that. And overall, I'd say my experience is mostly positive, but still with some flaws that are leading me to get rid of it. So let's talk about the good. First things first is the engine. This is a KTM 790 Duke derived engine, so a naked sport bike, and it feels sporty. It likes to rev. It's pretty fun. 95 horsepower might not be like a huge number, and it is kind of a heavy bike, but still, it still feels peppy, it still feels fun, and when you are in a twisty road and you keep the RPMs high and you keep in the power band, it's really cool. And having come from a super sport bike, I mean, I appreciate that. I like a sporty feeling bike. I like a sporty feeling engine, and this one is, and it's cool. So I like that. That guy's getting some. I think that was an MT-09 or an MT-10, but he's definitely getting some. So, this has that kind of, actually like a bike that just went by like that, kind of naked sport bike appeal, even if it's like bigger, taller, and has like dirt wheels on it. Still cool. Next thing I like is the comfort, the ergonomics. I mean, I can sit on this thing for 10-hour days, and I have, which is cool. It's good for commuting because you sit super high up and you can see really well over traffic and stuff. Coming from that CBR 600 RR I used to commute on, you're hunched down, it's harder to see. This is cool. You really get like a commanding view of traffic and stuff. It's nice. And it's just generally comfortable. There's a lot of adjustability in the ergonomics, but even though I am, I think, shorter than the average person buying one of these bikes, the default setup is pretty good for me. So I'm 5'9" with a 30-inch inseam, and while the bike is still on the tall side for me, the actual knee, foot, arm position, shoulder position is good. Even standing up, it's not like a big problem or anything. Although I assume that if you're a really tall guy and you're standing up, you're going to need to raise the bars up at one point. So I like the ergonomics a lot. Next thing is the handling. This one has the basic suspension. It's not the R, which is, you know, full adjustability and just better components in general. But even still, it does a nice job, especially on the road. Small complaint is that the fork is a little harsh. I think I'm a little lightweight for this thing. At about, with all my gear on, I'm a little less than 160 pounds. And if I'm not bringing any luggage or anything with me, like right now, you know, the fork's a little harsh over bumps. It definitely transmits into your skeleton a little more than I would like. But otherwise, no complaints. The handling is really good. Again, I haven't really ridden it on a lot of trails or anything, so I don't have an opinion there. But for on-road, it's great. It works really well. And that's like kind of the best stuff. There's a lot of little things. I like the electronics. I like the turn from this lane. I like the TFT display here with all the information you get. I think that's pretty cool. What else we got? That's fun. I love the fuel range. I should have mentioned the 450 kilometer fuel range is just awesome. Not having to gas up so often is really cool. I know it's really not meant for convenience. It's really meant to be able to go 450 kilometers between stops, not just skip a few. But I like it, you know, just for like when I was commuting, like I only had to gas up like once a week instead of like every couple of days with some bikes I had. So that's fun. And that's a lot of the good stuff. There's a lot of small things, but it's, you know, a lot of the good stuff right there. For the negatives, well, the price is high on this bike. It's quite expensive, especially for what I actually use it for, which is kind of a naked road bike with a bit of touring once in a while. So there's that. Also, like, stuff for it costs a lot because it's in the ADV segment. So, like, the tires on this thing cost a lot. I changed the stock tires once I wore them out for some Dunlop Trail Max missions, and boy, were they expensive. I suppose I could have found cheaper tires, but, you know, those were kind of the average ones rated for the kind of riding I was doing and stuff, and, like, they're expensive. No two ways about it. Other stuff too, like, you know, that luggage was not cheap. Yes, I could have, again, probably found a cheaper solution, but, you know, that's kind of like par for the course. It's not the full-on, like, Touratech solution, which is crazy expensive, but SW Motec stuff isn't cheap either. Just in general, I guess, like, they expect the owners of these kind of bikes to have more disposable income, and they price things accordingly. There you go. That's a bit on me for buying it, though. What else don't I like? The transmission is kind of a pain in the ass. That weird, you know, back to neutral after going to first thing that happened before, that was new, but a more common one is hitting neutral after trying to go to second, which is especially annoying when you're kind of turning from a stop sign and you try to shift in the middle of the turn and then you suddenly have no power and, like, kind of panic and gotta, like, right yourself. And it happened often enough to me that I have the instinct of being ready for it now, but it's still, like, no way would I call that kind of thing fun. There is a quick shifter on this bike. It's an option that I had added, and it is pretty cool, especially for the downshifts. It's very slick on downshifts. Any RPM, you bang a downshift, it auto blips. It's really slick. You don't feel any jerk on the bike or anything. It's like super smooth. You can even shift down to first. There's a slipper clutch on here. It won't chatter the rear or anything. It'll just go right over it. It's really nice. On upshift, it's a little less slick. You definitely have to be going at higher RPM. If you're trying to bang out a shift at 2500 or something with the quick shifter, you're going to find that it's a little jerky. But other than that, it works pretty well, especially at high RPM. So that's the transmission. I wish it didn't go into neutral quite so much. It doesn't always happen. It's intermittent. And it might have something to do with chain tension. When I changed these tires, the chain did tighten up a little bit because it had been a little looser than spec before, and I put it kind of back into spec. I wonder if you know, that might have had something to do with it. If I wasn't selling it, I would experiment with that. I would loosen it back up and see. But, you know, there you go. So, other things I don't like. Well, I mentioned I don't like the face before, but that, again, you don't see it while you're riding. It's pretty minor. Although I will say that it sounds shallow, but looks matter to an extent on bikes, and I kind of want to go into this really briefly. I think looks matter to the extent that at least here in North America and most of the Western world, bikes are fun. They're not necessities. I have a car. I have a Honda Civic. It's a utilitarian, basic car, good gas mileage, comfortable ride, reliable as taxes. Love it. You know, and it's not horribly boring to drive like you might think it would be either. It's like, it's fine. So, you know, I have that. I don't need this to get places. You know, it's a little better on gas than the Civic, but like not much really. No, it is better. So that kind of begs the question, if we're going to have bikes, then shouldn't we like them? Shouldn't we be passionate about them? Shouldn't we be excited about them? And part of that, I think, is aesthetics. I think we do care about aesthetics. I don't think it's terrible to care about aesthetics. And it is, I do find it's unfortunate because this bike checked a lot of boxes for me, but never aesthetically. It's not why I'm selling it. It's like, it is still minor because when you're riding it, you don't see it. But I don't know why they're insistent on this weird bug-like futurism thing. It's so polarizing. Like, I do know people that like it, to be fair. A buddy of mine prefers this thing to the T7 kind of Dakar rally look, and I think he's crazy. But, you know, that there's proof that people like this. I would have went, if it was me, with something a bit more traditional and simple that kind of would appeal to more people, like broadly. But maybe I'm basic and I'm boring like that. Anyway, it's not important. I just wanted to go on that little tangent about why I don't think that aesthetics are necessarily a bad thing to care about. I think it's a fair thing to care about. I wouldn't put it over how well the bike rides and all that, but I think it matters. I think people want to be excited about the bike they buy, especially because it's a toy, and that's important. So let's get into the real things that are bad about this bike, though. All that other stuff was minor. Oh wait, one more minor thing. The gas station just made me think of it here. This is the worst fuel gauge I've ever experienced, and I owned a DRZ 400, which doesn't have a fuel gauge and doesn't even have a light to tell you you're low on fuel. It has a open the thing and look at how much gas is left, and that's it. And this one manages to actually be maybe worse. And the reason for that is that it reads full until it gets halfway. Whoops, that was embarrassing. Sorry about that. Let's try that again. It reads full until it gets to halfway. So no 3/4, no none of that. It's just full and then it's half. Right now I'm a little under half. I'm at 280 kilometers, so that kind of makes sense, right? I said 450 range. I think that starts to include the reserve, so it makes sense. The thing is, though, then that would be weird, but not so bad. But then when the bike goes on its stand, it like takes really, really long for it to read again properly. So you turn the bike back on after putting it on its stand, and then it's like freaking out low fuel warnings, and you have to dismiss them on the little buttons here, and you still have a little exclamation mark. But then, you know, you right the bike, you ride it a minute or two upright, and then, oh, the gas goes back to 2 or 3 bars, and then it should be fine, and that should be the end of it, except the warning never dismisses because the system doesn't like realize, oh, there's actually enough gas in there. It just annoys me. If this was a $6,000 Versys X300, that system would not annoy me. That's, you know, whatever, it's not super refined, it's a $6,000 bike, but this bike is a lot more expensive than that, more than double. More now if you buy one, actually, a new 890. And it just, like, at that price, I expect better. I expect more refinement. I expect things like stupid UI and UX, things like that, to work properly. So that's a small annoyance. I'm done with it. Now for real, the real things. The weight and the seat height. There's no escaping them. 470 pounds, pretty tall seat. I don't know the number, but it doesn't matter because it's wide. My DRZ was definitely taller than this, but I had way less trouble with it because it was a lot narrower and, of course, a lot lighter. And you combine weight and seat height together and you get a tall, tipsy-topsy machine. And I'm an experienced rider. I think I've been riding for 6 years now. I can't remember exactly, but let's call it 6 years. I've ridden a lot of different bikes in that time, and I'm not like the best rider or anything, but I know how to ride a bike. And on the street, this height and weight don't bother me. I don't have an issue. You're not gonna get caught out on the street, even on a gravel road. It's just the street with a slightly looser surface. It's, you know, no big deal. It's when you try to ride it on a trail, and that is the meat and potatoes of my problem with this bike. It's that on a trail, I am not tall enough and not skilled or confident enough to not need to have to put my feet down sometimes. And I'm not tall enough to do it effectively, especially when you consider that trails are like loose crap like this at best, or mud, or God knows what, and your feet are just toes down only, and you're trying to get purchased like that and slipping and sliding while you're holding up 470 pounds, and that's hoping you didn't bring luggage on your adventure tour. It's just nuts. I mean, I can't do it. I'm not capable of handling that, and the bike's going to go down. And 470 pounds, I'm an office worker. I don't lift a whole lot. I can pick it back up if it falls in the street, and I can get a good grip on my shoes and put my chest into it and use my legs to pick it back up. That's okay. But alone on the trail, when it goes into a ditch and the handlebars are like under the back, like lower than the rear tire, how am I gonna get that back up again? I think I'm gonna have to wait for some guys on ATVs or something to show up and help bail me out, which is just embarrassing. And if you're remote enough, that might take a very long time. So for those reasons, this is not a good bike for me to try to do the kind of off-road adventure tour riding that I had really wanted to do with it. COVID obviously threw some monkey wrenches into my plan, but I would have loved to do something like the Atlantic BDR in the US. Can't cross the borders conveniently now obviously, so maybe next year. But I mean, on this, even though there's more people that go along those kind of trails, I don't know. I don't think I can handle such a big bike myself in that case. Maybe I could, but I just don't feel confident about it. I want to feel confident about it. And what that has led me to do is mostly just ride this bike on road, or like I said, on gravel. And it's a good road bike. It does handle well. It is sporty. But the reason I'm going to get rid of it is that for what it costs, it's just not the best road going option out there. I'm not going to get another Super Sport or anything like that, but just a normal kind of sporty road bike. There's a million of them out there, all sorts of options at every price and weight and size. And you know, they'll perform better on road than this, because this by necessity has a suspension set up for on and off road, has a 21-inch front wheel. Even if I put more road focused tires on it, they're still kind of going to be weird compared to real road tires. And I mentioned it's heavy and expensive and tall. You know, there's no need for all that. And if I'm going to ride off-road, I'm going to go back to a dual sport. And I can do that now. I might have moved to a different suburb, but I don't live in another one of those condo forests like where we started out. Now I live in a house with a garage, which is I'm very fortunate to have been able to do, especially kind of during the post-pandemic housing crisis here in Canada. So now that I have a house with a garage, I can have two bikes. It's not a big drama anymore. And for what this thing costs, I could have two bikes that cost like the same as this, or maybe a little more, and have two bikes. So no, I'm gonna go straight. That's my thinking. I'm gonna replace this thing with an on-road focused kind of machine that's still comfortable, but it won't be a big touring bike either. It will be able to tour, but it won't be. I want something small, compact, nimble, get the weight down, that sort of thing. And then I'm going to get another dual sport, maybe another DRZ 400. I like the KLX 300 a lot. Also, it's a little down on power, so it'll be a bit crappier on the highway. But I like that it's fuel injected. I like that it's very light. I like that it has a sixth gear. I could see myself doing something like one of those BDR trails on something like the KLX 300 and having a rockin' good time. So something like that. Maybe even a WR250R if I can find a used one for a reasonable price, but they're quite expensive. So I think it's easier to just find another DRZ rather than do that. So those are my thoughts for a bike, for a dual sport. I already bought my road bike. I'm just not saying what it is because I want to do a video about it. I know it's kind of dumb to do a surprise video for like your second video when no one's watching, but hey, you know, maybe somebody one day in the future will watch these in chronological order. So there you go. Who knows? So yeah, the summary of this video is I had fun on this bike. I liked riding it, you know, on the street and stuff, but I've got to say that it definitely has some flaws for me, and I would have liked to have more confidence to be able to ride it off-road. And it's just a little too big and a little too heavy for me to really be able to do that with any kind of confidence. So I'm going to sell it. I'm in a good position to once again have 2 bikes, so I'm going to buy just a road bike, and then next year I'm going to add a dual sport to this, the stable, and go back to riding off-road on a light, nimble bike that I can manage, that I can ride alone on and feel confident, which is important for me. Ooh, this is a sharp turn. All right. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So if you're considering one of these bikes, just keep in mind, it's a pretty good bike. And if you ride off-road with your buddies and have people there to help you pick it up again, that's awesome. I don't have any friends that ride off-road, and I don't want to ride with strangers, so, you know. If you are a big, tall guy, you're 6 foot something, 180 pounds, you can handle picking this thing up a lot more confidently, and you probably won't drop it as much to begin with, because you're closer to the ground. When stuff goes ugly, you can paddle. This could be a good bike for you. If you're a really experienced off-road rider, you really know what you're doing, and you can handle a big bike. I mean, people off-road R1200 GSs, for God's sakes. So something like this, probably a lot easier, you're going to be able to do that. So, like, this bike, I don't think it's a bad bike. I think it's a bad bike for me if I want to expand my off-road riding, which I do. I was really into it, and I thought I would continue with this, but it just didn't work out like that. So that's it. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you'll watch more. I hope you'll see what my mystery bike is going to be in the next video, and have a good evening, morning, whatever time you're watching this at, and peace.